Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan Cunningham. I lead the product team for Power Apps here at Microsoft. Really excited to be with you today to talk about using Power Apps at scale, and particularly scaling responsibly through a low-code center of excellence inside of your organization. What does that mean? Why do you need one? How do you set it up? And what are we doing as a product team to make that easier for you? That's exactly what we'll cover over the next half an hour or so today. Now, we've seen, and maybe you can relate to this in your organization, just tremendous growth in adoption of Power Apps and the Power Platform more broadly over the last several years. We're at a point now where almost all, 97% of the Fortune 500 use the Power Platform in some capacity. The vast majority of those organizations using Power Apps as well as Power BI, Power Automate, and just incredible year-over-year growth. Fifth year running of triple-digit year-over-year growth of end users using the platform, now in more than 500,000 organizations around the planet. And a lot of these organizations, this is more than just casual, occasional, or isolated use. For a lot of these organizations, we're actually seeing really committed usage across thousands of users, hundreds of makers, and intentional usage inside of the IT organizations and technology organizations that propel this forward. And for many of these people around the world, and maybe you as a listener, what started a few years ago as novelty is now no longer novelty. And especially when we look at the last several months and what COVID and other global crises have done to our industry, we're at a point where we're transforming rapidly. Is no longer a novelty. It's no longer optional. It's a must for a lot of organizations. And many people have probably used the quote over this of this event. We've seen more digital transformation in the last 2 months than the last 2 years. As an entire workforce has shifted to working from home, as entire industries have had to adapt on their toes, there just has not been time for traditional software development at the traditional pace and methods that it has followed. And a lot of us have had to innovate, have had to rethink. To give an example of that, we'll zoom into one customer, Novo Nordisk. Had a great conversation with Toke, who runs the digital innovation group inside of the division of Novo Nordisk that works on bringing new vaccines and medications and other trials to market and runs clinical trials around the world. And when COVID-19 hit, that effort of developing clinical trials so dependent on in-person lab work at locations around the planet, just huge crisis for that organization to get ground truth on what they could move forward and what needed to have extra assistance. And to hear the story, without Power Platform, without Power Apps, that probably would have looked like 700 different people having to fill out a combination of Excel spreadsheets, email each other, collate and aggregate them among mid-level managers, and try to get some source of truth. They were able to build a Power App, not only build it, but test it, iterate on it, and get it into the hands of people to start using in 9 days, all the way to market, and just made a huge difference as just one of many responses to the COVID crisis in this business. Here's the thing. That wasn't the first Power App they built. The journey of Novo Nordisk on Power Apps started over a year ago, in early 2019, with individuals attending app-in-a-day trainings and building basic skills on the platform, starting out with simple Canvas apps over SharePoint lists and Excel spreadsheets. And then later, really discovering the full breadth of the platform, digging into the common data service, model-driven apps, really using the structured data that those provide to drive better business intelligence on top, and driving just an incredible amount of growth in value of the platform inside of this organization. And then, of course, when COVID hit, they were prepared. Not only did they know how to build applications, they had an IT infrastructure and a support infrastructure around low code in the organization. And that's what allowed a more sophisticated and frankly enterprise-grade app to be delivered in just days and start to push the needle for this organization in a way that traditional tools just never would have. And as you can see, big dip here in the early part of 2020 in terms of monthly active usage, but really accelerating after the crisis because of that. And to hear Novo Nordisk tell their story, it's really about mutual trust that makes this happen. Central IT in this organization trusts the platform, trusts the controls and the capabilities that they have available to them, and the business unit takes responsibility for the application. And Toke is not doing this as an amateur on the sidelines, right? There are partners involved. There are data pipeline experts. There are developers working inside these applications alongside citizen developers. But it's the trust mutually between a central organization and the business units that are empowered and need to act quickly that makes this whole thing work. And look, that's not an isolated case. As we're learning as organizations scale their adoption of low code, this is a team sport. This is not just about one citizen maker trying out a new thing in isolation on the side. It's also not just about one top-down motion, but it's really about multiple people coming together and finding ways to work together. And that really becomes between business users or citizen makers, citizen developers, traditional software developers who write code for their jobs, and the IT organizations who keep it secure and keep everybody working together. And those mutual relationships are crucial. Gartner refers to this phenomenon as a fusion team. We think of it as a power team. And this is about a place where business users who understand exactly what they need and understand their requirements can participate in the development process, either by building parts of apps themselves or working alongside developers who leverage low-code pieces. Developers can help by doing the hard parts, exposing the APIs, writing a React UX control when they need to, dealing with the more complicated business logic, but not having to do a project full stack. Developers rely on the DevOps tools and source control and lifecycle management services and the platform that IT trusts and grants them access to. And IT can govern and monitor and empower the citizen developers and the business units in the organization, which again is a two-way street, where citizens register apps they're working on, know where to go for help, but don't have to have IT be the long pole in every single project. It's that type of ecosystem that really starts to drive this level of innovation. And look, every team sport has offense and defense, right? And low code is no different, right? And we hear this all the time. There's a lot of people, especially in IT organizations, who have experience with, I would say, low code of the past, with whether it's Access databases or InfoPath forms or Lotus Notes applications or spreadsheets with VBA. There's a lot of legitimate concern. We can't let citizen development get out of control. I don't want people developing thousands of applications in my organization without any guidelines or compliance. On the other side, figuring out how to make that power team work together fundamentally changes the economics and the pace of bringing solutions to market. And there is just no other game in town where you can deliver a mission-critical line of business app in 9 days, soup to nuts. And so figuring out how to get this balance right is crucial. And figuring out how to make sure that development stays in compliant and safe and visible rails, but then is unlocked and unleashed in order to deliver quick value, that's the whole crux of driving a center of excellence and driving value at scale in your organization. And people can do it. In fact, people do. We'll jump to one other customer story, and then we'll get into some details. This is Toyota. Great conversation with Chris last week as well. And he said something that might surprise people who are looking at citizen development from the outside. He said, look, the main reason we've embraced Power Platform and citizen development generally is to battle against shadow IT. This is not about encouraging the long tail of things to cause problems in the organization. It's about encouraging development on a platform where we have visibility, where we have trust, where we have control. Because we don't when people go roll their own thing outside of a core platform or hire a vendor or pay a SaaS product under the table or just work on that Excel spreadsheet on their desktop. When they're working on the platform and when they come to us and see us as a resource, now this thing starts to work two ways. And Toyota and many others have really worked that out in really concrete detail. If you're a new maker and you first try Power Apps at Toyota, you build your first app, you get an automated email from Chris's team, and it asks you to register your app. They've actually built a Power App for that registration. And if you don't respond to it or don't take any action, your app gets isolated and unshared automatically after a few pieces of communication. But if you do register it, IT will connect you with other people that are working on similar things, and they'll lean in to help you if you need it. And you'll sign a contract and agree to maintain responsibility for maintaining that app, which means you get access to training resources and hackathons and office hours where IT is leaning in to help you be successful. And in a few cases where your application really does need extra help, is an enterprise grade or mission critical scenario, or becomes highly successful in the environment, IT has a whole process to step in, graduate that application, take it over, bring those professional resources to the table, and make it go further. And so being able to get this dance right is crucial. It's been crucial for Toyota to realize that a lot of these things don't necessarily end up the way that they start. A lot of things that start with citizen development and seem like a simple use case on the surface quickly become something that can have value to the whole organization. And being able to nurture at each of those ends and monitor and have a process for graduating becomes crucial to taking advantage of that value. Now, look, Novo Nordisk, Toyota, dozens of other organizations like them are investing in this because fundamentally this is different than low code of the past. This platform is built on the concept of trust at a really concrete way at every level. Unlike many of the things some of us have had experience with in the past that are sitting on desktops or happening outside of visibility, the Power Platform is sort of fundamentally built to be governed. It's built on the most trusted network and cloud provider with the broadest global footprint on the planet. We have data resident in over 50 locations, support more than 40 languages, has sovereign cloud support, national clouds, US government, China, and beyond. On top of that, entirely integrated with everything your organization is already doing at the tenant level, particularly with identity management and Azure Active Directory. Every single action on the platform by a maker or a user happens as themselves, happens in a world-class identity management system, and is logged in the cloud, which means that there's infinite visibility into what's going on there and visibility that can be harnessed. Within the platform itself, there's a concept of environment isolation. I can create complete security boundaries and an arbitrary number of them at a level smaller than the tenant that wraps all users and apps and data and connections. And I can set up those environments specifically for different business units or for dev and test and prod and exert complete control over who can build what and who can have what permissions in those environments. When I'm using the common data service, I get even more. I get really granular role-based access control permission. I can go all the way down to the field level and the CRUD operation level to decide exactly who can do what in those environments. And when people are building on top of all of that, I've got resource level control of apps and flows and everything else that's get packed in together. So it's just a different ball game now in terms of the capability to keep a citizen development and scaled low-code operation on the straight and narrow and productive in a way that just has not existed in the past. Now, if you're looking at this from the outside and you're new to this, understandably, the question becomes, okay, that's great, but where do I start? That's a lot of detail, and we understand completely. But that's where we're here today to talk about, and we'll only be able to scratch the surface in the time remaining in this session. But we've just published some really in-depth guidance specifically on this topic. In fact, we've just added this adoption best practices section, deep level of documentation and white paper about how to start to think about setting up a center of excellence, and then all the way down into the nitty-gritty details. How do I set up that email alert monitoring? How do I do automated responses when things are happening in the platform? It's all here in this paper at aka.ms Power Platform Guidance. What I'll spend the rest of the time we've got today doing is hitting a couple of the high points that are covered in this document from a structural standpoint, give you maybe a roadmap to think about working through it, but also focus on some of the cool new feature enhancements we've made in the admin and governance space recently that really keep pushing the envelope here. This is a place where, as an engineering team, we are invested heavily because we know that for all the ease we bring to low-code development, it's not worth it unless we're also bringing the right level of trust and governance and security to the enterprise. All right, so let's dive in. Now, when you're thinking about your low-code center of excellence, really think in terms of three main activities or areas to focus. First and foremost, how are you going to organize yourself? Are you sitting in a central IT organization? Are you sitting in a business unit? How are they going to work together? And what's the right way to start investing in people and capacity and expertise to be able to do this right? What's your strategy? And once you've got that up and running, and as you bring it up and running, now start to think about the governance aspect. How are you going to secure this environment? What policies are you going to into place? And how are you going to monitor what people are doing going forward? But that alone is not enough. That's sort of the defense angle. How do you keep it safe, keep it secure? You also want to go on the offense and think about, how do I actually harness the capability here and get value out of it? How do I make hundreds of qualified makers who can build thousands of useful things in days and start driving an incredible amount of value for my organization? How do I start to nurture those business units and support them as they go? So we'll dig through each of these and cause some highlights today. First and foremost, organization. Look, there's not one right answer here, and every organization is different. What it means to govern and manage Power Platform at SNCF, the National Railway in France, which, by the way, has tens of thousands of monthly active users and thousands of people skilled in Power Platform, very different from what it means to govern and manage Power Platform at the Tacoma Public School District down the road here in Washington State. And organizations at different sizes and stages of maturity and IT support models have rallied around a few of these different concepts. And we go into them in more detail in the paper. There's the centralized model. We're going to have one team sitting central in IT that's responsible for all things low code, both sophisticated and more citizen oriented. We're going to have distributed teams. Maybe they'll be embedded into business units, or maybe we'll have a sub-center of excellence around Office 365 and citizen development that'll be different from our focus on business applications and enterprise LOB, which might look more traditionally like a development team. There's hybrid models, of course. We'll have one central team and a hub and spoke model with these satellite teams. And then there's this particular hybrid model that people are rallying around, this concept of a fusion team or a power team, where we'll actually staff and set up multidisciplinary units. People with experience in data governance and security, developers with experience in data integration, citizens who know how to use the tools and understand a business problem will empower those hybrid teams to really work together at incredible speed, faster than traditional agile software development allowed for. So think through these dynamics and read about them and look at some of the examples of other customers that have followed each and start to wrap your head around what's right for our organization. How are we going to get ahead and lead into this? As you do, then start thinking about how we actually start to apply the tools. And again, first and foremost, let's get governance down and governance straight. There's a lot to think about here, and this is just a screen cap from the paper of some of the many things in the checklist to start thinking about as you manage and secure and monitor an environment. We'll dig into two today that are particularly worth calling out. You want an environment strategy. Not every low-code project is created equal, and not every maker is created equal. And that's why we have this isolation boundary of environments where I can completely separate developers and the things they work on and the users they serve from each other. And a lot of organizations start to think in terms of how those segment across the criticality of the business. There's a productivity environment that comes with Office 365 that's really just for every individual to tinker with their Excel spreadsheets and SharePoint lists. It's not a place to do serious enterprise app development, but it's also not a place to really have to over micromanage, because I can set more passive governance policies over it. So I'm not going to run my critical production apps there, but I am going to approach that productivity space as a place where I'm setting up guardrails about who can connect to what data and making sure that stays in that personal angle. And then I got a whole other set of applications at the departmental level that are a little more important than what I want to run over an Excel spreadsheet for everybody, but are maybe not at the level of needing to staff an entire dedicated development team to yet, right? These are places where I can have a trusted app owner in a business unit who's been to training, who's shown me that they have the basic skills and is willing to sign up to own it themselves, so that I don't have to put resources on it centrally in IT, but I can trust that the right things are are going to happen. And I can choose whether I want to set that up with an application set lifecycle management setup with multiple environments, or keep it specific to individual environments. And I'm able to amplify my reach as an IT organization without having to be involved in every single decision. And then at the top of this pyramid, there are things that really are mission critical that I want to make sure do not fail and put a traditional development team on. I just don't want that development team to be writing everything in code from scratch, because they can go faster when they're working in low code. So being able to segment that way is key, in thinking about the strategy ahead of time helps sort every new project as it comes in the door. Now, as I do that, I can apply data loss prevention policies. I can say, okay, I'm up and running. I've got a finance environment, actually a dev test prod instance of it, and that's different from a marketing environment, which is different from training. And I'm going to apply different policies across those to what data sources can be used and where data can flow across the organization. I can create policies at the tenant level. I can also target them very specifically to environments to create that passive governance that really allows development to happen on the straight and narrow without me having to pre-approve everything. And we are adding a ton of capability there specifically in data loss prevention. These capabilities are all new within the last few months, are rolling out now. We've added the ability to really get in there and granularly block specific connectors and even actions on those connectors. We've added endpoint filtering, so I can go in there and not only control whether a user can access SQL Server in an environment, but get down to really specific endpoints of SQL servers that can and can't be used. I can get into the data source and connector sharing level, decide who can share a connection, what they've created it, and I can even isolate tenants. I can say make sure that all data stays inside of my tenant, or allow very specific tenants on an allow list without letting anybody have free reign. Just a few of the capabilities that are new and out there, and it goes further than that. Also have added capability for email exfiltration, the ability to block that entirely. We've added the ability to dig into user access issues and diagnose problems. There's just a whole bunch of tooling now in the platform for this measure of governance and security, which is crucial, and a lot of depth behind it. There's more coming too. In fact, just in the next few months, we're rolling out security and risk assessment reports, in addition to the actual usage reports that exist in our admin centers. Figure out what threat detection looks like, analyze permissions and data flow setup, and tag things that might look out of whack, and then also have security best practices all sitting within this Power Platform admin center. We're excited to roll this out pretty soon. Okay, so you've got your strategy set up, you've organized your team, you've taken steps to make the environment secure and govern it. How do you actually start to activate usage? How do you start to get this pool of talent that's latent in your organization productive and up and running on your platform? Again, there's a lot here, and we'll skip a stone over a few things. We saw that journey earlier in Toyota. A new maker made an app, they got contacted by IT, they got a welcome email, they had to respond to it. Many customers will go even further than that. They roll out templates and branded components that make it easier for people to build apps that are on brand. They set up a drip cycle of communication and engage the community with those makers. They set up internal Yammer groups and hackathons where people can connect with each other, spark ideas. They set up app catalogs where they particularly show individual apps that were developed maybe in specific business units or types of application. And then they maintain the health and the hygiene of the tenant over time. And so starting to think about that relationship, not as a one-time, we put a policy in place, we walked away, but really we're committed to growing this relationship over time. That's key. And what makes it work more than anything is the ability to monitor and understand what's going on inside of the environment. So again, a lot of innovation coming here, and a lot of innovation recently shipped. We've improved the app usage reports that come out of the box in the admin center. I can drill into not only what apps are doing, but also what makers are doing across apps, and understand exactly what's going on, where they sit, what they're building, what connectors they're using, who's using the apps that they're building, get really granular with that level of visibility. And I can also do more than just what comes out of the box. I have great reports in the admin center, but I can export all of that data to my own data lake and build my own Power BI reports over it using Power Query, maybe mash that up with with other data sources to get a richer picture of low code in the org. I can also export data about individual applications, both Canvas and now model-driven applications, to Azure App Insights and get really granular reports on the usage of those individual apps, as well as even do debugging and log analytics, figuring exactly what went wrong or why is an app running slow. All those capabilities now available to take it further. And I'll say that these are just some of the things that come out of the box. One of the key capabilities we've shipped is the ability to connect the platform to itself. So I can use Power Apps and Power BI and Power Automate to manage Power Apps and Power BI and Power Automate. And we've shipped a starter kit of assets that help you go even further. Richer BI dashboards, registration apps, the types of applications that help you maintain compliance of your own developers, assets for doing some of that organization-based theming and branding. All of it's there at aka.ms/CoE Starter Kit. A ton of great capability to check out as you dig in. We're innovating on that as well. You'll see some new innovation backlog and business value assessment apps coming into the CoE Starter Kit very soon. So you'll be able to help measure the impact of the apps that are being developed. A self-service portal for makers to give a better job of pointing them at the right resources inside the company. A way to help people share their own success stories and get feedback that's more qualitative from your own audience about how these things are working in your org. This is where it gets exciting, folks. It's not just about organizing and governing and doing that passive defense. It's also about really starting to get in and harvest value in the organization and equip people to do more. And as I start to do that from an IT capacity or any technical leadership capacity, that's where I really start to see ROI that is not on the typical linear scale for business software as a service. I start to empower people with new skills, people who understand how to innovate in their organizations. They start to help each other, and all of a sudden I'm innovating at a pace that I never thought possible. To give you a little taste of that, I want to share a story all the way from Lagos, Nigeria.
My name is Fola Olujimi. I work with Sterling Bank PLC here in Nigeria. The first app I built came about from the request of a business user saying, we would like to put this Excel sheets on OneDrive. And I said, what we need to do is we need to build an app for this. And I built my first app using Power Apps. After that, people got to hear about the app and how quickly it was done. I'm like, oh, Fola, I would like to build an app. So I thought to myself, why should I upskill myself alone? And why should every other person not know how to do this themselves? So I thought about the idea of Citizen Developer Academy. So the user group, we started with 2, and we started to grow in that way, and we're currently 1,200. And when they learn, they get so inspired, and they go back to their communities, they go back to their schools to start up local user groups there. So we'll have events, and most of the speakers will be male. That was what started out Textilers. We're currently over 300 women, all passionate about helping and supporting each other, using our knowledge in the Power Platform. For me, the Power Platform is not just another tool. It's actually a transformational agent. And I believe strongly that if we all get into this revolution, we'll get to a point where our whole country, Nigeria, will be totally transformed.
All right, incredible story. If Toyota can do it, Novo Nordisk can do it, Sterling Bank can do it, you can do it. Now it's your turn. Start thinking about, if you're not already, how you can encourage this type of community and this type of development in your organization. And if you are already, start to think about how to take it to the next level. One more plug on a great set of resources on how to do that, all here at aka.ms Power Platform Guidance. Take a look, check it out, and stay in touch. Thank you, everybody, for the time today. I'll end on one last plug. Please fill out an evaluation of the session. Help us get better at helping you. And check out all these other great resources on how to learn and connect and explore and get the most out of this Ignite event. It's been awesome to share the time with you, and I hope we see you out there soon.